Ode on a Grecian Urn by John Keats. John Keats wrote his famous Ode on a Grecian Urn at the astonishing age of only 24, just about 2 years before his tragically early death. The focus of this poem is very much on the significance of art and art making, in particular on the relationship between art and reality. This theme is signaled to us, of course, by the title of the poem. Keats is writing about an urn, which is an ornamental vase used to preserve the ashes of a beloved person. An urn is a work of art, and Greek urns and vases have been noted for the outstanding pictures which adorn their sides. The first four stanzas of the poem consist largely of the poet's description of such scenes, as he finds them painted on the sides of his imagined urn. Let's go ahead and read the poem through once, and then we'll take a look at it in more detail. Thou still unravished bride of quietness, thou foster child of silence and slow time, sylvan historian, who canst thus express a flowery tale more sweetly than our rhyme. What leaf-fringed legend haunts about thy shape of deities or mortals, or of both, in Tempe or the dales of Arcady? What men or gods are these? What maidens loath? What mad pursuit? What struggle to escape? What pipes and timbrels? What wild ecstasy? Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. Therefore, ye soft pipes, play on, not to the sensual ear, but more endeared, pipe to the spirit ditties of no tone. Fair youth beneath the trees, thou canst not leave thy song, nor ever can those trees be bare. Bold lover, never, never canst thou kiss, though winning near the goal, yet do not grieve. She cannot fade, though thou hast not thy bliss, for ever wilt thou love, and she be fair. Ah, happy, happy boughs, that cannot shed your leaves, nor ever bid the spring adieu, and happy melodist, unwearied, forever piping songs forever new. More happy love, more happy, happy love, forever warm and still to be enjoyed, forever panting and forever young, all breathing human passion far above, that leaves a heart high sorrowful and cloyed, a burning forehead and a parching tongue. Who are these coming to the sacrifice? To what green altar, O mysterious priest, leadst thou that heifer lowing at the skies, and all her silken flanks with garlands dressed? What little town, by river or seashore or mountain, built with peaceful citadel, is emptied of this folk this pious morn? And little town, thy streets forevermore will silent be, and not a soul to tell why thou art desolate can e'er return. Oadic shape, fair attitude, with breed of marble men and maidens overwrought, with forest branches and the trodden weed, thou silent form dost tease us out of thought, as doth eternity, cold pastoral. When old age shall this generation waste, thou shalt remain, in midst of other woe than ours, a friend to man, to whom thou sayest, beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth, and all ye need to know. The first thing to note is that the poem is written in the form of an ode. An ode, put simply, is a poem of praise, a poem that expresses the emotions of admiration and gratitude. Odes are a venerable poetic genre and have been written for centuries, going back to the ancient Greeks. They were traditionally written in praise of the gods or of heroic persons. Keats' decision to write an ode about a vase, then, is somewhat unusual, and we have to ask why he chose to do so. It becomes apparent as we read through the poem that what Keats is really praising is not the urn itself. It's not, in fact, any particular work of art, but art itself. The question we want to ask ourselves is why? What is it about art that Keats finds so vital to human flourishing? Answering this question will lead us a long way towards understanding the poem. Notice, too, that Keats speaks directly to the urn throughout the poem. This form of direct address is known as an apostrophe. Used in this poem, the technique allows the poet to underscore his belief that art communicates with us in a very intimate way, and that this is what makes it so valuable. Let's take a look at the first stanza. The poet begins the poem with a paradox. He addresses the urn as a bride of quietness and foster child of silence, calling attention to the obviously inarticulate nature of the object. But then he goes on to assert that the urn is a sylvan historian, sylvan here referring to a rural or woodland scene, a historian who tells a tale more sweetly than our rhyme, meaning poetry. So this apparently silent object actually speaks to us by relating a story in a manner that's actually more powerful than poetry, the preeminently spoken art form. How does it do this? Through the pictures painted on its side, all of which represent a series of stories. When we look at the scene described in the first stanza, we find that it is indeed a sylvan scene, one taking place in the woods. Notice that the legend or story is described as leaf-fringed, and the references to Tempe and Arcady are references to wild regions in ancient Greece with many mythological associations. What is taking place here is a kind of ecstatic courtship ritual, in which men or gods engage in a mad pursuit of women who are not particularly receptive to their advances, the maiden's loath. Note too the reference to pipes and timbrels, or drums, which leads us into the next stanza. In a neat parallel to the first stanza, the poet begins his second stanza with another paradox. Heard melodies are sweet, but those unheard are sweeter. What can it mean to say that the songs we do not hear sound better than the ones that we do? Well, think of a favorite song that you might have. Suppose one day you hear a really terrible band covering that song on the radio. How would you react? Very likely you'd turn the radio off and then replay the song in your head the way you remember it, the way it's supposed to sound. That is to say, you would imagine the song being played, and in this case, your imagination would sound better to you than reality. In fact, our imagination routinely presents us with visions of a world superior to our own, a world where love lasts forever, where people treat one another with justice and kindness, and so on. This is both the great virtue and the great danger of the imagination. It presents us with a vision of an ideal world towards which we can strive, but it can also make us discontent with reality, and thus tuned out of the real world. As we'll see, the poet is aware of both of these aspects of the imagination. But we can see now an answer to our question beginning to form. What makes art so important? Since each artwork is an act of imagination, each one offers us the opportunity to glance at a world transcending our own in its perfection. The pictures which follow in the next two stanzas express that ambiguous power of the imagination. The bold lover in stanza 2 is depicted as on the verge of kissing his beloved. Because he and the woman are frozen in time, she will always be beautiful, and he will always be in love with her. And yet, because he will never actually be able to kiss her, he remains eternally deprived of his bliss. The imagined scene is one of timeless youth, beauty, and gaiety, which nonetheless lacks something essential for the satisfaction of human desire. In the same way, in the third stanza, the trees are described as perpetually in bloom, the happy boughs that cannot shed their leaves, and the pipe player is described as forever piping songs forever new. The love which exudes from the scene, that happy, happy love, lifts our souls far above what the poet calls all breathing human passion, the pain and disappointment associated with desire, which the poet is referring to in the final two lines of the stanza. By being lifted out of the realm of human desire and the heartache which necessarily accompanies such desire, we are freed, at least momentarily, from the hardship of life. But we're also in danger of floating off into a realm of delusive unreality and losing mental contact with the world we actually do inhabit. This is the danger inherent in escapism. The fourth stanza describes a ritual sacrifice of a cow, that heifer lowing at the skies, perhaps suggesting something about the sacredness involved in art, something Keats believed in strongly. It's in the final stanza where the poet attempts to state the value of art most explicitly, and it's here, perhaps as a result, that the language of the poem becomes most elusive and debatable. The figures on the urn are referred to as marble men and maidens, and the whole scene is called a cold pastoral. The emphasis is on the unreality of the pictures, their lack of warmth, their lack of flesh and blood. Yet it's precisely at this point in the poem that the artwork speaks most explicitly to us, saying in the famous concluding lines, "Beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all you know on earth, and all you need to know." Critics have debated over the meaning of these lines endlessly, and many have questioned whether in fact they make any sense at all. I'm simply going to offer one possible interpretation of this passage, but it is just one interpretation. The equation of beauty with truth is wrong in one obvious sense. The truth about life is often brutal and ugly, not beautiful at all. And beauty, in turn, is often illusory and deceptive, which is to say, not true. So in the real world, it seems very doubtful that beauty and truth can be identified with one another. But notice, It's the urn, the work of art, that's making this assertion. Perhaps then the point is not that beauty and truth are identical in the real world, where they are obviously not, but that we can find them united in the world of the artwork, which is the world of the imagination. The inapplicability of this formulation to our world is perhaps proof that it really does signify something about a transcendent realm. So we go back to the question we began with. Why write a poem about an urn? And we can see a kind of answer presents itself here. Since art is capable of offering us a glimpse of that transcendent realm where beauty and truth really are one thing, it is worthy of our praise and our appreciation.